Okay, hey, so glad you're here. Let's talk about the gear that I used while recording Bullet the Blue Sky by U2. It was a really fun song to record, and a little bit, it was a lot harder than I thought it would be. You know, I've played the song before live in bands and stuff like that, and it always just kind of flowed, but when you're really trying to make things not perfect, let me say that I don't try to completely 100% reproduce the songs that I re-record, but I like to put my own spin on it, you know, give it my own sound. So the bulk of that song I played on this. It's a 2016 Jackson JS34Q Dinky. Beautiful color. I like the wood grain in it. It's made in China. It's a $350 guitar, but fear not, there's nothing I like to do better than find a guitar that feels good in my hands, that's cheap, and do upgrades. So what I did on this one, I've got the Seymour Duncan TB6. It's their trembucker or distortion pickup, but it sounds really good. And then I replaced the Jackson single coils with Seymour Duncan's SSL1s. It's their vintage Stratocaster. It replicates a 59 Strat pickup, and you can really hear it in this song. It's just the chiminess of the neck pickup and the middle pickup. And through most of it, especially on the solo, I just used the combination of the two single coils. Of course, I did a complete setup on the guitar, string height and all that sort of thing, adjusting the neck, because they never seem to come set up correctly when you buy them at the store. The Jackson Floyd Rose or licensed Floyd Rose tremolo is just fine, but what I did do was I upgraded the block in the back with a brass block, and something magical happens. I mean, maybe I'm nitpicky, but I think the guitar really comes to life when you add the brass block. It's a number 32. And if you want to replace yours, if it's a Floyd Rose anyway, you can look on the back of the block with a flashlight and see what number is on there. It might be 32 or 37, 38, and I think that has to do with the height of the block. I haven't done that much research on it, but I know that you have to match your number. Otherwise, you can just, might give you some troubles. Of course, the volume and tone pots were replaced with CTS. I left the switch alone. But that's about it. It's a great guitar, and I enjoy playing it. And as you can hear, it sounds really good. Okay, so on the rhythm guitar tracks, or the left side as you're listening, I used my 2014 Gibson Les Paul Traditional. This thing's heavy as hell. There's no weight relief in it. Easily my favorite guitar ever that I've ever owned. It just really, I love it to death. It's the 120th anniversary of Gibson. It's got the little, I don't know if you've ever seen them, but on the 12th fret it says 120th anniversary. It's a mahogany body, obviously, maple cap, no weight relief, as I said. The pickups are interesting because they only made them this year. You've probably heard of the 57 and the 57 Plus. These are actually 59 tribute humbuckers that they made just for this year. So it's as close to an R9 as you can get without buying an R9 and paying the extra, probably, $2,000. Upgrades on it, well, I had the nut dressed up professionally. I don't do that. The tuners, I'm actually contemplating putting them back, but I replaced the tuners with Grover locking tuners, as you can see on the back there. And the Keystone keys, of course. But the original tuners were a 14-to-1 gear ratio. I found it going out of tune a lot, so I put these on it. It's a little bit higher gear ratio, and they lock. So, and then the bridge, I replaced that with Tone Pro Set, Nashville style, Tune-o-matic. I don't really have a preference right now. It's top wrapped. I may adjust it next time I change strings. The strings do feel a little bit slinkier when they're top wrapped. They bend easier. But as far as playability and all that, I don't really have a preference. Okay, let's talk amplifiers. I've only got 3 here that I use right now. And for this one, as I said, I wasn't trying to get edges sound exactly, so I used my Marshall 205H 50 watt head that's behind me there. I used the overdrive channel on amber. My volume was not quite at 5. You can see the settings here. My bass is on 10, the mids are set at 5, the treble is just short of 5, gain is on 7, and the overdrive mode is set to amber, like I said. In the master section, I was using master 1, and I set it to 3.5. Yeah, it was a little bit loud in this room. Resonance is at 10, and presence is set to 5. And of course the reverb, no reverb because I'm using my Boss RV6. Now, a funny thing happened to me one day when I walked into a pawn shop here in Clayton. Clayton Golden Pawn. I walked in, I see this 412 Marshall 1968 lead cabinet. Had a price tag of $450 on it. I was like, wasn't a priority. I've got a couple of nice sounding cabinets here already, and I don't need a 4x12 cabinet. I'm not playing out, and I'm certainly not playing any big venues. So I started making my way to the door, and the guy said, "Didn't you say anything you liked?" I said, "Yeah, but I didn't want to pay that much for it." And so he's like, what is it?" So I showed him the Marshall cabinet, and it's marked at $450, and I said, I'd pay $300 for this all day. But, he's like, "Well, will you do $300 and the tax?" And I'm like, sold. So I got this thing. It was loaded with 4 G12T 75 watt speakers, 16 ohm. That's what they normally come with. They're not the worst speakers in the world, but a lot of gearheads, they just don't like the way they sound. And when I got it home and I listened to it, I said, sounds kind of brittle. So I pulled the 4 speakers out of there, and what I did was I put in 2 Celestion Vintage 30s and 2 Celestion G12 M65s in an X pattern, and it sounds brilliant. I mean, I love the sound on this cabinet now. It's, between that and my Friedman, those are my 2 go-tos. So what I wound up doing for this recording was I just used 2 Shure SM57s. I put one on a Vintage 30, and I put the other on the G12 M65, and I recorded the track in stereo and did a nice mix of the 2, and got a nice thick sound out of it, so I was happy with that. Alright, effects. Everybody's got this thing about pedal boards, and there are Facebook pedal board groups where I see these guys have got like 40 pedals on their board and wires running all over the place. And one nice thing about doing this whole recording thing is that the only pedals that go on my board are the pedals I'm going to use for that song. So there's basically 3 pedals on my board right now. I use the Boss RV6 reverb. I use that pretty much the same setting for the last 2 years. It's edge, so you got to have a delay. I use the Boss DD3. It's an older delay pedal, but it sounds nice and warm, and it gets that edge sound pretty damn good. And then there's the MXR M134, the stereo chorus. I use that one. I had the bass at 1 o'clock, the treble at 1 o'clock, intensity at 10 o'clock, width at 1 o'clock, and then the rate down about 9 o'clock. And the bass filter button is off on that. It's a great sounding pedal. It really thickens up the sound, and I just love the chorus effect that I get out of the MXR. And for a couple of $100, whatever it is, I don't even think it's $200, maybe $170. You can't get a better chorus. So, as far as recording this whole thing, the audio section, I pay for a subscription to Avid Pro Tools. It's not, it's not terribly expensive, but if you're up and coming and money's tight, and believe me, we've all been there, it can be a hassle. You could do this with something like Adobe Audition, or a free music recording software like Audacity that you can just download for free. But I've become, the more I use Avid Pro Tools, the more I love it. And the thing I really like about Pro Tools is the amount of plugins that are available for it. The one that I rely on quite a bit, especially for doing guitar solos and cleaning up lead vocals or making them sound better, enhancing them, is Real ADT, and it's basically a sound expander enhancer that was created in Abbey Road Studios specifically for the Beatles. I forget the fellow's name that created it. You can look it up. It's on Wikipedia though. And then the other plugins that I use generally are an EQ and a compressor limiter, just to make things sound a little bit tighter, because it's easy, you know, when you're recording guitar, it's easy for it to get lost in the mix, so you got to really punch up the mids and help it to cut through. And the compressor limiter is one that I use sparingly, just a little bit to make the guitars punch through the mix a little bit better. The tracks that were used, it was a total of 15 tracks in this mix. So the bass track I recorded stereo, that took up 2 channels. As I said, I mic'd the rhythm guitar for 2 channels. I put one Shure SM57 on a G12M 65 watt and another Shure SM57 on the V30. I haven't gotten into using room mics yet. Everybody tells me you got to have a room mic, but this is such a small room. Where am I going to put it? So rhythm guitar tracks, there were 3. The one on the Jackson is done in stereo because, as I said, I recorded the G12M with a Shure SM57, and then I recorded the other speaker, the Vintage 30, with the second Shure SM57. That's 2 tracks by itself, mixed stereo and blended. And then on the right side, or on the left side rather, it's the Les Paul, going through the same head, same amp, but I just mic'd the Vintage 30 because I wanted it to cut through a little bit more. Not that the G12 is not a good speaker, but it's definitely a darker sounding speaker, and I wanted this to be brighter. And then the solo was recorded on a separate channel. Again, that was recorded on the Jackson through the same Marshall head, same stereo mic setup, so G12M Vintage 30, and I thought it came out pretty good. Certainly I'm not the Edge, but I don't claim to be the Edge, and my goal is not to, you know, make an exact duplicate of their studio production, but you know, just it's a cover, and I like to put my own kind of a little bit heavier sound on it maybe. And if you listen to the original YouTube version, the Edge's guitars are almost clean, no distortion whatsoever. But that's his sound, and I don't, you know, have any desire to duplicate what he did or what anybody else did. Anyway, if you like the channel, if you appreciate what I'm doing here, give the video a like, subscribe to the channel, and you'll get regular updates when I'm updating new songs. I thank you for joining me, and rock on.